What's up guys, it's Forza Memories, and I want to discuss a major question in the car industry, which is why hasn't Australia been able to create a supercar? Despite being one of the most technologically advanced continents, there have been a few Australian car makers that have tried, but they all have failed. The first company to try was called Josh Supercars. Josh was founded in 2004 by Matthew Thomas, who's an Australian automotive engineer with tons of experience in F1 and other motorsport leagues. Their first prototype was called the Josh JT1. The JT1 was officially unveiled in 2004, and its features were very similar to McLaren models. The rear end and butterfly doors were identical to the legendary McLaren F1, while the rear deck mounted exhausts were the same ones that were put onto the McLaren 600 LT. At the heart of the JT1 lied a 6.8 liter naturally aspirated V8 that delivered 500 horsepower and 480 pound-feet of torque. The car weighed only 2,000 pounds, so when you combine its mighty power with its light weight, the GT1 could go 0 to 60 in less than 3 seconds and reach a top speed of over 211 miles per hour. The initial price of the JT1 was set to be $450,000, which was a hefty price for a car in the late 2000s. So alongside the goal of becoming the first Australian supercar, Josh wanted the JT1 to break the current Nürburgring lap time record for a production car, which was held by the Pagani Zonda F. But just when the production of the JT1 was about to start, investors pulled out the project, citing that Australia is too difficult of a place to manufacture high-performance cars. Now, there were two key reasons why the investors of Josh said Australia is too difficult a place to manufacture high-performance cars. The first reason was that labor costs were very high in Australia. Australia currently has the third highest minimum wage in the world, with an hourly wage of 24 Australian dollars, which, to put this into perspective, can get you 5 Big Macs in Australia. The US minimum wage of $7 can only get you 1 Big Mac in the US. The second reason was that Australia is in a lot of free trade agreements with industrial powerhouse countries like the US and Japan. So essentially, when somebody buys a product from the US while living in Australia, they are not taxed by Australia for buying a product from the US because of the free trade policy. Free trade for an isolated continent like Australia is bad for local companies, because without tariffs, people are just going to buy products from other countries because they're cheaper than Australian products. This is why the top 5 most driven cars in Australia in 2020 were all either American cars like the Ford Ranger or Japanese cars like the Toyota RAV4. Since a lot of investors pulled their investments, Josh had to turn to crowdfunding, which is basically asking for donations. They needed to raise $480,000 in order to continue production, which required an absurd amount of donations. Of course, it didn't work, but Josh did end up almost getting a $35 million investment from a local private equity firm, but that investment fell through for unknown reasons. And so officially, Josh filed for bankruptcy in 2015, and since then, both Josh and the JT1 have disappeared from the world and will likely never return. The second attempt at creating Australia's first production supercar was made by Brabham Automotive. Brabham Automotive was founded in 2018 by David Brabham, who's a very successful motorsport driver. His father, Jack Brabham, was a legendary F1 driver who was the first driver to win an F1 championship under his own racing team using his own race car. David wanted to go the same path and race under his own company using his own car and win at the 24 Hours of Le Mans, and he planned to do so with the Brabham BT62. The BT62 was first introduced to the world in 2020 and features a 5.4 liter naturally aspirated V8 that outputs 700 horsepower and 492 pound-feet of torque. The BT62 weighed only 2,300 pounds and was able to produce over 2,600 pounds of downforce. The BT62 had a top speed of 200 miles per hour and a 0 to 60 of 2.8 seconds. Brabham originally planned for 70 track-only BT62s to be produced, and each one would go for a price of $1.2 million. The BT62 made its motorsport debut in the 2020 Brit Car Endurance Championship, where it quickly established itself as a front runner. The car's performance on the track was nothing short of spectacular, as it consistently set lap records and secured multiple wins throughout the season. With their newfound success in motorsport, Brabham set their sights for the 2022 24 Hours of Le Mans, but unfortunately, Brabham was unable to compete for one reason: they didn't have a road legal production model of the BT62. For a car to be eligible to compete in the LMGTE category, it needs to have a mass-produced road legal model, as these classes are intended for GT-style cars that are derived from road legal production models. So in order to compete in the Le Mans, Brabham announced that they are planning to produce a road legal model model of the BT62 called the BT62R, which was basically a stripped down BT62. However, Brabham was already struggling to create models of the BT62 because only a handful were actually made, despite Brabham Automotive announcing that they were going to make 70 units of the BT62. So we were already getting a glimpse of the behind the scenes struggles of Brabham. But regardless, Brabham was confident that they could make 70 units of the BT62 while also being able to produce Australia's first production supercar in the BT62R. Sadly though, both of these goals were never achieved because Brabham split with their partner Fusion Capital. Fusion Capital provided the money and resources, while David provided the name and reputation. The partnership ended because Fusion Capital felt that their goals did not align with David, because they wanted to create more road legal production cars instead of only race cars, while David really only cared about creating race cars that he could race in instead of actually making the company profitable. So with the funding gone from Brabham, David was forced to shut down and close Brabham Automotive, and in the hopes of not only making Australia a powerhouse in motorsport again, but also creating Australia's first production supercar. Australian companies in general struggle to even make high performance cars. Holden's by far the most famous and successful automotive company in Australia, having been in business for 164 years. They are known for creating the Holden GTSR W1 and the Holden GTS Maloo, which are to date the only high performance cars to come from Australia. They're also known for their success in the Supercar Championship, which is a popular motorsport league in Australia that consists of teams like Nissan and Ford. Sadly, not even Holden could survive because they were shut down in 2020, making Australia the only continent without a current operating car company. General Motors shut down Holden because of the same reasons listed by the investors of Josh, citing that it's just not profitable to create cars in Australia anymore due to the free trade policies. Australia's free trade policies have killed the Aussie's automotive industry because citizens would rather buy a foreign car from China because it's cheaper than buying a local Australian made car. This is why Australia has yet to create their own supercar, and also why there's no current operating car manufacturer in Australia in 2024. So that's all for the video. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I'll see you in the next one.